Hello, my name is Emma. Welcome to this short instructional video on how to use your Smappee charging station as smartly as possible. For about 10 minutes, we will take a closer look at the configuration options of the Smappee smart charging stations. Broadly speaking, there are three methods for charging your car: standard charging, smart charging, and solar only. These three options are available on all smart Smappee charging stations. To make the choice, go to the Smappee app and select your charging station. Now you get the basic configuration of the charging station, and you can easily choose between standard charging, smart charging, and solar only. With standard charging, the intelligence to charge or not lies in the hands of the owner or user of the charging station. Charging of the car continues until the car reaches the limit set by the car, or when you unplug the charging cable. If wanted, you can add simple schedules to standard charging. Compare this with having a light on a power outlet with a timer. When the timer is set to off, the light is off. When the timer switches to on, also the light will turn on. A simple schedule allows you to plug in the car at any given moment, but the actual charging only starts when the schedule allows it. You can just plug in and charge without taking solar production or tariffs into account, but then charging the electric car can become costly. With standard charging, you can keep an eye on when there is a high solar production or there are low rates and then start or stop charging. Obviously, that is not a useful use of time, so there is room for improvement. This can be done by opting for smart charging. With smart charging, you can make use of the intelligence of the Smappee charging station and be sure that as much as possible will be charged via the surplus of solar production or at times when the purchase of energy is cheaper. To make smart charging work according to your needs, different configurations are possible and necessary. To start with, we're going to set up smart schedules. By making a schedule, we indicate on which days of the week, at what time we need the car, and how many extra kilometers we want to drive. A few important notes on this. So we indicate when the car should be ready. This means we don't tell you when the charging should start. This will be determined by the charging station according to the available time between plugging in the car and being available. Optionally, you can set a time when charging is allowed to start. This would only be necessary if you want to keep control yourself when the charging process is allowed to start. Note that charging is not allowed to take place before that time. So, even when the car is plugged in and there is an abundant surplus of solar production or a very low rate, no charging is allowed before the set time. In addition, we indicate how many extra kilometers need to be charged. So, we don't specify the percentage to which the battery should be charged, but we do specify how many kilometers our trip will be. Smappee makes a calculation based on an average consumption of 20 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers of the car. Or in other words, if you ask for 150 extra kilometers, the charging session will charge 30 kilowatt-hours extra. How does scheduling the charging session work? Well, you as a driver don't have to do anything other than plug in the charging cable and possibly authenticate your session via a charging card. Initially, charging will start immediately. Actually, you can see this as a kind of introduction between the charging station and the electric car. After all, the duration of the charging session will depend on the maximum charging capacity of the car. This will vary depending on whether charging is done on one phase or on 3 phases, what the available amperes are, and what the maximum power of the car's inverter is. Finally, the power of the charging station may be limited in order to keep the cost of the capacity rate under control. Once that introduction has taken place, the charging station schedules the session and pauses it if necessary. Let's translate this into a practical example. After getting acquainted, the charging station determined that the maximum charging power is 11 kilowatt. The smart charging schedule requires an extra 100 kilometer by 7 a.m. on Saturday evening, or in other words, 20 kilowatt-hour. The charging station will then know that about 2 hours of charging time is needed. Imagine that there is 12 hours between plugging in and departure time, then the charging station has plenty of time to make the most optimal choice. However, if you plug in the car only 3 hours before the desired departure time, the charging station will need a large part of the available time to achieve the desired driving range. In such a situation, there is less freedom and fewer options to charge via solar energy or at low rates. One final note on the smart schedules. Every time a vehicle is connected to a charging station, the available charging schedules in the next 24 hours are examined. If there is no smart schedule available for the next 24 hours, the charging station will use standard charging. That is why it is advisable to have a smart schedule, or even several smart schedules, active on every day. With smart charging, a number of additional options can be activated. The first option activates the possibility that charging will continue using solar production, even if the charging schedule has already been met. In this way, the surplus solar production is optimally used by charging the car and not by exporting it to the grid. There are still a number of comments to be made about charging with solar production. We look at these in charging with solar energy only. The last option is to choose to charge with only self-produced solar energy. With this method, there is no import of energy from the grid, but you only charge with a surplus of solar production. The number of kilometers charged in this way depends very much on the weather conditions and on the consumption in the home. On cloudy days, there is less production anyway, but even if the consumption in the house is rather high, there will be less surplus available for the car. Keep in mind that an electric car needs at least 6 amps to start charging. This equates to a minimum overproduction of 1.4 kilowatt for a single-phase installation and 4.2 kilowatt for a 3-phase installation. If there is no or insufficient solar production, the car will not charge. Since not all solar installations have such a surplus, there are a number of workarounds.
The latest Smappee charging stations automatically switch between single-phase and 3-phase charging. You don't have to do anything for this, but there are a number of requirements. First, you need to have a 3-phase star grid connection. The feature only works on the EV wall and EV1, provided that the third digit in the serial number is at least a Nairaat 2. A second option is to mechanically adjust your charging cable. By only connecting phase 1 of the charging cable, you only need a surplus of 1.4 kilowatt, even with a 3-phase installation. This means that less solar energy is needed to charge the car. Make sure you disconnect phases 2 and 3 from the charging cable, not phase 2 and 3 of the power cable. Finally, a combination of surplus solar energy and input from the grid is possible. By changing the slider, you determine the minimum amount of solar energy needed in the mix before charging can begin. In the example, it is set to 30%, which means a minimum of 2 amps or only 450 watts surplus in the case of a single-phase installation.
Thank you for your attention during this video. Now you know how to set up a Smappee charging station for smart charging. If you have any question, please contact training@smappee.com. See you later.